here's the first thing. I'm going to give you a list of things that seem simple, and they are simple. They may be hard to do, but there are also some complex things that you really, 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 really need to know. You need to teach your kids.
Yes.
The first one, we talked about it on the way over here today. What's the first mindset? The first thing you need to know?
Well, we talked about several, but how to use money.
Yep. What's the first chapter? What's the first chapter of this book was titled? Rich people do not work for money. For money. Yes, okay. Sorry. So there's rich person, wealthy person mentality, and there's poor person and middle class mentality. Right. Poor person and middle class has the same mentality. What's some things that poor people and middle class people teach their children?
Work hard.
Work hard. Get a good education.
Yes.
Not bad ideas.
No.
You know,
but there's more.
There's way more important things. Get a good job. Get a job with benefits. Get a high-paying job. Not a bad idea. Get a job with a retirement plan.
Right.
Okay. Now, rich people do not work for money. What's the second part of that?
Money works for them.
Their money works for them. Okay. So you have to get yourself in a position where your money can work for you. Now, wait a minute. I don't have any money. Thank you, Russ. Russ is more than qualified to talk on this topic. We touched on it a little bit when Russ was on here. But here's I know I can speak to the poor people out there because I've been poor. And
absolutely.
I can tell you how to get from there beyond middle class and start getting into an area where you're doing, much, much better than all the people in your past, right? In your family history.
Right.
Here's the simplest thing. I'm going to give you the secret, the answer right now. And it's a real solution. It's a real answer, but then I'm going to have to break it down and explain what I mean. Rich people give this advice to their children. Acquire what?
Assets.
Acquire assets and limit liabilities. Exactly. Now, but here's the confusing part. Most people don't know the difference, and you think you do.
Very true.
Don't tune out because you think that's oversimplified, because I'm going to break some things down. What's some things that we think are assets?
Your home is not actually an asset.
It's not an asset. It's on. Now, Russ will tell you that it is on your asset. It's in your asset column.
Right.
But it is not an asset. Why?
Because it costs you money.
For instance,
your light bill, your water bill, your taxes, your landscaping, your all the bills that come along with it.
So it's constantly.
It's not making you money.
Yes. You're absolutely right. So let's talk about three things that poor people and middle class people consider assets. That now listen, I'm not going to argue with definitions. I'm not going to argue with people who can explain by definition that a house is an asset and that a car is an asset.
And we have those things.
Of course.
I mean, that
is good. That is a good thing to have those, but to think that it's an asset. As a matter of fact, Russ is on here right now watching. Russ and I talked about this with Russ. I said, Russ, what good is an asset sitting here with no cash flow? Sure, it's equity. Sure, it shows up as part of your net worth, right, but it's doing you no good if you're not
building you anything.
You may get some
maybe later when you sell your house, you'll get something, but for years it cost you a lot of money.
All right, so let's talk about three things that poor and middle class people use, and everybody has this: a house, a car, and a credit card. Okay. Can a house be an asset? Sure.
Yes.
But it's not helping you. You would be better off. I'm not advising this. I am telling you that you're going to have to block those comments because people are commenting as me and I can't tell what they're saying. It's distracting. I'm sorry. So where was that?
You're going to talk about the house, the car.
Okay. So everybody has a house. And yes, it can be an asset, but it's not. It's going to take all your money. It's going to eat it up in insurance. It's going to eat it up when the AC goes out. It's going to eat it up when you need a roof. So I'm not telling you not to have a house, because I have a house and I love my house. What I'm telling you is it may be we rented
a long time though.
because that rent was $1,100 a month. And if the air conditioner tore up, what did you do?
We called somebody to fix
And
it
if the
and
roof
didn't
started-
pay for it.
And if the roof started leaking, what did you do?
Somebody else fixed
So
it.
there's this very good advice to rent until you
can afford to pay for all those things that come along with the house.
Well, yes, but rent. It's a good idea to rent beyond that, because as long as you can get by with living in that house and renting, you can use that extra money to do
build
what?
your wealth.
To build your wealth, to acquire assets. So let's talk about some assets that you can acquire and that your children need to acquire. Okay. All right. Let's talk about somebody who, this is what the title of this is, what rich parents teach their kids that poor people don't know. What do middle-class people and poor parents teach their kids to do with money?
Spend it pretty much.
Well, even a middle-class person will say things like, you need to
save your money.
You need to save your money. Right. Well, saving money is a losing idea. I'm not saying you shouldn't have some cash.
Right.
But cash is depreciating every single day.
And money sitting somewhere is not doing you any good either.
It's not doing you a bit of good. So you've had money sitting in a savings account.
I did. I'm guilty.
Well, but it was sitting there for a long time, money sitting in a savings account. What did you decide to do? Once you learned some better things to do with your money, what did you do with that savings?
I decided to invest it in stocks.
So you can put money in stocks. Now, listen, young person, and tell your teenagers and your kids in college this. Unless you have a substantial amount of money, unless you have $10,000, unless you have $20,000, you're already broke. You're already broke. So the best thing you could do with that money is invest it in yourself and to figure out a way to make that money grow.
Actually, my savings account I had for 3 years with a bank. And I made $32 or something crazy like that, and invested in stocks. And in 3 months, I made $1,200.
Right. And now that you could lose that $1,200.
Oh yeah.
Again.
I mean, I could, but I didn't.
Right. And we've already had financial advisors on here like Russ Story who can tell you what to do with stocks.
Just saying what I did.
Exactly. All I'm telling you is you got to get your mind right and understand the difference between an asset and a liability. So let me tell you what is an asset. We've already talked about stocks. Real estate. What types of real estate can be an asset?
Real estate can be an asset. Something that you actually have rent coming in every month, and it's making you money.
Something that you have rent coming in every month, right? Okay. So a cash producing asset.
Yes.
An asset is something that pays you. You have a rental house, right?
I do.
All right. Every month that house
pays me money,
throws money at you, and it might go up in value.
Yes.
Right. Just like the house we live in may go up in value, but it doesn't pay us anything.
Right.
Okay. So parents, you need to teach your kids to acquire assets. I see so many kids running around in a vehicle that has a payment on it, and they have a credit card with an interest on it. Right.
Yes.
Now there's a time to use
very high interest.
Very high interest. You're on the wrong side of that interest if you're financing your cars, if you're financing your houses, and you're buying stuff. You're buying stuff with your credit card.
The most important thing that they need to know is if you do, and I mean, we finance things for a really, really, really long time. I mean, we still have my car, I think, is financed anyway, but I don't have very high interest on mine at all. Maybe even zero. I'm not sure. But if you're having to finance the whole car, you cannot afford that car.
Right.
You cannot afford that car. Just because you can afford the payment does not mean you can afford the car.
Yeah. So we looked on the way over here. The average American has how much credit card debt?
$5,700.
$5,700, and they have interest on it, right? That's not smart. So what's some small steps? You know what? I don't want to talk about the small steps. I want to make sure that we get the rich mentality across to the listeners. Okay. Acquire assets every asset that you can acquire, every
Yes.
asset that you can afford.
Right.
Okay. If that's stocks, you can do it yourself. You can call Russ, right? He can help you with a better plan than this. My job is not to give you the plan.
Yeah, no.
My job is to get you thinking properly.
Yes.
Learn what an asset is. So many people have land and real estate that's just sitting there. Okay. Some people will buy lots. They'll buy property that's not cash producing in the expectation they'll buy property on a lake.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an investment. That's not an asset because it has property tax attached to it. Now, not saying you won't get lucky, not saying the property won't go up in value, but you're going to have to pay property tax on it until it does.
Right.
And then it may not go up. Right. So that's a speculation. You're welcome to speculate. But if you want to get rich for sure and not get rich quick, the best thing you can do is invest in yourself and acquire assets. Can you acquire a rental property that costs $150,000? Can you make it make sense to finance that rental property and put a renter in there?
You can.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You absolutely
can.
Yeah. Now that makes way more sense to borrow money. This is where rich people use other people's money to make themselves rich. You can get a loan from the bank, buy a rental property that the tenant pays you, and you use that money to pay the rent and start building equity that way. All right, let's take a look at the comments and see if we have any questions or comments now. So Billy W. Merritt said, I always think of an asset as something that makes you money versus something that does not. So I think that obviously was one of the people who was logged into my account. And I totally agree with Billy W. Merritt right there. Let's stay there. Stay on Billy W. Merritt. That is the definition of an asset. Something that pays you. Something that pays you versus something that takes money from you. A liability is something that takes money from you. Very rarely is a credit card an asset.
Right.
But it can be. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's talk about the two types of home ownership. Everybody wants to live the American dream and own a home. Nothing wrong with that, especially if your goal is upper middle class and you want to own a house. You don't want to be rich, then that's fine. That is fine to have middle class mentality. But I'm saying that rich people don't think like that. And I know this because I've studied them very well. Rich dad, poor dad. Robert Kiyosaki's a very rich man. Grant Cardone's a very rich man. Donald Trump's a very rich. This is not political. I'm just saying he's a very rich man. So rich people use other people's money and they acquire as many assets. Grant Cardone says, go broke. If you want to be rich, go broke buying assets. If you keep just enough money to pay your bills and then give Russ Story the rest of it. You're not giving.
He agrees with that too.
He does. Now you're not giving Russ Story your money. Russ Story has a plan with your money, right?
Yes.
He's not the only financial advisor. And by the way, if another financial advisor wants to get on here, you're welcome to come on the show.